my vice. Man up from Mars, he tripping, I put that on guard. I got the digits, but I am not calling. Wizard at night, this be that forum. I'm just gonna stack with that. Sunshine after that. I'm just gonna stack with that. Sunshine after that. So yeah, you know, I had a conversation with her, but it's like the signals is always crossed. I mean, like, I say yes, cause she asked me to say yes. And then she's like, I didn't want you to say yes. I wanted you to understood that a yes was required to answer the question. I was like, what?
Welcome, y'all. Welcome to the spot, the Stacked After Hours spot. I am your host, Natalie Cosby, and welcome to the show for Grown Folks Talk. Tonight, we are going to get into a really deep conversation around the shame and silence of abuse. After this week's tape with Cassie Ventura and Diddy and what happened in the hotel in 2016. We felt like it was only right and just, especially when we talk about Black love and Black relationships and how this affects the Black community, that we have a really deep conversation about it. So, of course, it's going to be enlightening. It probably will be lit because of just who we are as people. We laugh, we cry, but it was very disheartening to see just what had happened. But before we jump in and I introduce my panel, I just want to go through before we get really clear what is actually domestic abuse. And I think we popped it on the screen and we could just pop right back up just so people can take a minute to read. Domestic abuse and violence is a pattern of behavior in any relationship that is used to gain or maintain power or control over an intimate power. Abuse is physical, sexual, emotional, economical, physiological psychological actions or threats of actions that influence another person. This is from the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So y'all get ready. We want your questions, your comments, your thoughts on tonight's show, especially tonight's show. And here's how we keep it, of course, lit and enlightening. So let's introduce our panel. Hey, everybody. So tonight, I thought it was really special. And I specifically chose these people because I feel like everybody has a connection to this topic. I wanted to just really introduce our panel. Of course, we have our maestro and brother who has been attached to the music industry for years, Malik Kayem. Welcome, Malik. Welcome back from Colombia. Thank you so much. We have Marcel, who I call him our legal counsel, but he's also been an ally and advocate around this before the tape came out. Um, Hello, Mr. Campbell. And then a survivor, a advocate, a voice through her life, Valencia Murray. What's up, Valencia? And of course, Sunshine, our host, who also, and I think we all have probably had some form of some type of mistreatment. So I want to, before we go into a really deep dive, and everybody's been talking about it, I've watched thousands of people's takes on this video. I want to give y'all an opportunity, just like, what is your initial thought after you saw it? What was your reaction? And, you know, go from there. And I'm going to start actually with Valencia.
Um, I guess unfortunately for me, it was a familiar scene. So it was just, how they say people peopling, it was an abuser abusing. So um yeah, I guess because I've been there and done that, it just was a it's just a moment that unfortunately happens when you're in relationships like that.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Thanks, Valencia. Marcel?
I wasn't surprised, right? I knew if you had read some of the submissions that Cassie had made in her original lawsuit, she had definitely pulled out something that was founded in fact. So if anybody had read that, and if you haven't, read it again. I was not surprised. I was I was just taken aback by the sheer violence of the thing, right? When you read it, it's like an accusation, but for me, it was just kind of when you put those words to pictures, it moved me. It left a very different emotion where before I thought it was an accusation.
Mm. Thank you, Marcel. Thank you, Curly Sue. We've been waiting for this topic. Uh, Malik, as a brother in the industry, and you saw this, what was your thought
Yeah,
initially?
I mean, I would say like Marcel was shocked at the brutality of it, and it's just horrific, And it's like these things kind of, it's almost like when somebody walks by and you smack them on the ass or you cat call, people
Mhm.
don't see it morphing into this. But I feel like these small things that we allow and we normalize and we laugh off escalate to these kind of like just horrible assaults on people. Like I thought I was shocked. I was shocked. And I wasn't even in the country, so when people would like text me about it, I wasn't really grasping the gravity of the situation. And then when I saw it, I couldn't believe it. I like dropped my phone. I was like, wow, this is like really. It was like it kind of was reminiscent of the Rodney King beating to me.
Mm. Wow. 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 Okay. All right. Anthea, I know you said you were triggered by it earlier.
Yeah, I think when I saw it first, my initial thought went back to witnessing that in my own household. And my mind actually just went, first of all, I believed Cassie in the beginning. I didn't have to see the tape in order to believe her, right? I don't think somebody's just going to make up something like that. But my mind went back to my household and then my mind went onto the kids. How do you go back to um, hugging, talking, and being in a house with someone, a monster like that, right? And my own experience with growing up with that sort of abuse in the household, and still that person being your parent, one of your parents.
Yeah. It's it was so funny. Some people were just like, I know people. Some people were believing she was just there for the money and so on and so forth. It was a payday and all of these things, all of these accusations. Like, why is it so hard? I think for us to sometimes believe somebody when they say they're abused, especially when it's somebody of influence and power and who's so revered, and the other person has been benefiting supposedly, or that person's providing a lifestyle. Because I've heard people like, she should have been happy she was just there. That's what goes with being with someone like that. They're power hungry. Like, why is it, especially us, I was like reading comments, I was like, why do we just want to not believe her or someone who is abused?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is that for you to believe the abused person, you'd almost have to face your own demons. It's
Mm.
like everyone who didn't want to believe the kind of person R. Kelly was, even though we saw the Aaliyah situation unfold in front of us. Everyone who didn't want to believe some of the Bill Cosby stuff they heard and these other allegations. It's like you almost have to admit that either some of that is in you or you normalize it, or you're okay with it if you admit that, hey, what this guy did is wrong. Because if None of us in real life would befriend someone who behaved that way. But it's like when they become a celebrity, we kind of deify them, and we kind of separate their moral compass and their actions from their accolades as an artist in whatever field they're successful in. And I think that's what happens. I think a lot of people don't want to admit the shame that they like someone who's capable of this kind of behavior.
So I can,
But it happens
I can
not,
add.
sorry, I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
say quickly that it happens not only with celebrities. You have to be well liked and not even powerful, but just well liked, charisma, and those are sometimes characteristics of narcissists, right? I can't say that he is, but those are narcissistic qualities. I should say. I should verify that, and they're typically well liked people in the community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to come at it because some of these things can be super rational. So let's think about it from two perspectives. Usually, most of us have grown up in a society where there is a mixed bag of people that are claiming certain behaviors of men in order to prevail over them in a court or in some of those things. So we're naturally quite cynical. I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying what it is. I think if you take anything from the Johnny Depp scenario and a few others over the years, you can see that we have naturally become cynical about saying we need a higher burden of proof in order to make a determination of right or wrong. That's one. I think the second thing that I would also say is that sometimes these victims show up as less than credible witnesses, right? They're not going to show up in a way that makes you endear yourself to them, right? We kind of go, one, it triggers envy. If you've been living with a rich man for 10 years, why are you only complaining now? We have this natural inclination to put our own envy or jealousy or whatever first, and then we diminish and devalue them. None of that is right, and I think we need to actually listen more closely and that overcome our own bias when we hear these things. So I think Malik was right, is that some of these things already evident and out there, and we start to weigh the eminence of the individual being accused against the accuser. This is the god of the hip hop industry being accused by someone who didn't even make it. They made a couple of albums. So I think we need to really challenge our own bias when we come up with some of these things. But that's what I wanted to add.
I mean, if we look at it just on a level, but this is happening in the apartment above you. It's happening in the house 2 doors down from you. And so there is no difference of status. But we still get the disbelief or the questions. Could it be? Because if it's that bad, why is she there? And so once again, we go to the person that's being abused and we ask the questions of them. And I also think that we don't believe it because, just like for me, because I lived it, I believe it. So the video didn't trigger me like it triggered the 2 gentlemen on the panel, because you can't fathom that someone lives like that and acts like that and behaves like that and treats people like that on a regular basis. So this was like, oh my God, to you all. And I saw it like, oh, okay. It's like, I understand, I can relate, I feel for her. It doesn't take away of those human feelings, but it didn't trigger me. It wasn't surprising to me. It just fit the bill of the extreme that I experienced. Yeah.
I really wanted, I know we could have talked, I really wanted to scale this down to talk about the Black community, because I feel like, and I know it's happening all over, but our numbers are like, it's like a 10% difference from all other women. It's and the conviction rate, if she mistakenly, and can we just throw those statistics up really quickly before we kind of jump into this conversation? So in the United States, as they said, like 20 every 20 minutes 20 people are being abused. It's about 10 million per person. 1 of 7 men are domestically abused. 1 in 4 And then when we talk about emotional abuse, which is really interesting to me, and we can get into that conversation a little bit further, is actually men actually feel more by 0.4% than women. It's almost even. And then 50% of the abusers go back to their abusers. But the numbers for Black women, which is it's like a 10% difference, start just from white women, Hispanic, and Asian. Like where 41% are experiencing at least some kind of violence in our lives, which is 4 out of 10. 90% of Black women that are murdered by men are somebody that they know, and 2/3 of that is happening during an argument. And then the other thing is 80% of women are more likely to be convicted of killing a partner when defending themselves from domestic abuse. So, I don't,
So
go ahead.
I wanted to talk about that stat that talked about the argument, and that is something that I learned at a very early age. If I kept my mouth shut, then I'm not going to get hit. And I saw how arguments made, that parent in my household enraged. And so I can only imagine in other situations where there's, domestic abuse happening, that arguments could probably trigger those emotions. Not that it's right or not, but that has taught me to just stay quiet because that means if I get shouted at, first of all, if you shout at me just uncontrollably, I will just tear up for no reason, because shouting, arguing, all those things meant something really bad was going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. When I saw those numbers, Anthea, especially about the argument and the 2/3 of it, I was just like, let me take a moment, babe. That's okay. That's fine. I realized, like, yeah, Diddy and Cassie was major, but it's the other people who don't have the videotape,
Yep.
who cannot sue for 30 million. Like all of that, like the fact that is probably, if a Black woman is going to get murdered, it's probably going to be by somebody she knows.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth is ridiculous to me. And that is what's unnerving.
Yeah. When I left my abusive situation, the day that made me leave was a day that I said one of us had to die that day. It was just gonna happen. That was the day. And I got out of there, and the rest is history. But I will say that the trigger of don't say anything, this is how you get in it, and it's all of that we get that create the abusers / abusees. The abused and the abusers all come from what we had modeled for us. And whatever we took away from that, how to act, how not to act, a lot of my fights escalated because I was arguing. So I do understand that in those arguments is when women will be killed, or whoever is being abused will be killed, because the abuser is trying to, like they said, keep that power and control. And if you start arguing back, you're displaying a strength that they don't want you to have. And so if you keep arguing, then you're challenging, disrespect, all the boxes that abusers will turn your behavior into order to justify what they do. So, okay, something simple as like being out in public and doing this, it would be a fight coming home. If a male spoke to me that he wasn't aware that this guy knew me, it was a fight. If I danced with his brother at a family function, it was a fight. And then when he would ask me why he would dance, and I would say, well, why didn't you say that to your brother? Oh, so you calling me a punk? So now it's a fight. No, I didn't call you a punk. Did you just think that
Right.
what I said that you did was punkish? Or because I didn't say that. I asked you, why didn't you ask your brother? So yes, I unfortunately, yeah. And so people say, did you ever stand up yourself? Yeah, I stood up for myself. But the fights got worse when you stand up for yourself.
Yeah. So
So
go ahead, Malik.
yeah, I was going to add to that. I think number one, Anthea, I'm really right. It's shocking still that even talking about it evokes emotion in you. That is something that I think we all just need to recognize for a second that these things don't go away. I think what will be really useful to correlate when we're talking about the Black community is the correlation between all of the things that they're not causation, but they make these fights and friction worse, right? Mental health conditions,
Yep.
alcoholism, drug abuse, poverty,
Poverty.
right? These are all things that are endemic in some way to our very small microcosm. And when you consider the global state of affairs, these things are very prevalent in our societies. And I think sometimes when we talk about these things, it's not an excuse, but we have to factor in that if you have a high degree of poverty and a mental health condition untreated, that creates a certain situation. Now, that doesn't remove it, because these people are husbands, these people are fathers, these people are caregivers, and therefore, right, again, sorry, I'm not devaluing Valencia, I'm just trying to say.
No, I'm not saying that you're devaluing, but I'm going to still say that we can't say it's an issue because of our economic status when here's Puffy, billionaire, millionaire, whatever he is. He's not the only one in that status that does that. We have a cliche, like Natalie said, people are saying, when you get with a guy of that nature, this is what you have to deal with, that power. So we know it happens. So for me, I will disagree. A small point is that there are other issues here. I wasn't like impoverished. My ex-husband didn't even drink. Okay. So there was none of those factors were there. It comes from the modeling that we see when we come up, and however we interpret that as a child, we never speak to anybody about it to get a better understanding. Like Sunshine said, you see your parents fight, and then the next day, it's honey is okay. No one showed us how did we go from that to this. We think that this not the children's business. This is grown folks' business. Go to your room. And then when you see us happy again, just play along, and when daddy's getting a little bit whatever, then the kids go run, they hide, or the older brother or sister shields the younger one. And so they all have their part in their
So there's and there's a statistic that I didn't put it in there. It was saying 30 or 40% of the abusers were victims of abuse. So that is the most prevalent out of, like, not saying but that's one of the cause factors. Like, abusers, you do have to, when you look at R. Kelly, he was abused by his mother, or he was sexually abused. So when you think about abusers, they usually, more than likely, has some kind of abuse in their history. Yes, hurt people.
That's what I wanted to add to what Valencia was saying earlier. I dated someone who was abused like mostly her entire life. And during the course of our relationship, I remember we were like watching Precious one day, or like The Color Purple. In certain scenes I might laugh at or make light of, she like went left. Like she would really like break down, and I was just like, wow, and because I said, it's hard for me to understand that dynamic because I'd never lived that. Like I never saw my dad hit my mom. I mean, I might see them yell at each other, but I said I never saw that. So it almost got to a point in our relationship where abuse was like her love language. Like if I didn't react the way to certain situations, she would kind of look at me like, you're not going to slap me for that. Like you're not. And I would be like, slap you? Like, no way. Like, I have a mother, I have a daughter, I have women in my, like, it just wouldn't even do. And I remember, like, I told us at a point, you have to get help because you have so normalized this behavior that when you don't receive it, you almost feel like you're not being loved or you're not in a fulfilling relationship. because I said, I don't know how to hit women. I said, I think I beat my daughter once or twice in her life. Like, I'm just not, this is just not, I'm not that kind of person. I don't come from that kind of family. But I remember, like, it was just so telling to me that she would just, like, she would almost anticipate or hope for a certain reaction. And I said, man, whoever you were with, like, society or your parents did a number on you, because, and that's why I think it really has nothing to do with socioeconomic conditions. I think it's just, like you said, what you're exposed to, and then what you believe, what you translate into your mind and heart is what love and what relationships and what the male-female dynamic is.
Absolutely.
And I think if we double click on that and apply it to the use case that we're discussing here, the Puffy situation, I didn't know this until I read Cassie's thing, is that Puffy grew up with a father that was abusive.
His father died.
Was abusive. And he witnessed his father died and shot, whose father used to move around with Frank Lucas, who of American Gangster fame. He attended a Catholic boys' schools, a school that is in the news for child abuse. Yeah. And then it was documented all through the case that he was a drug abuser, like off the chain, completely off the record, abusing very hard drugs. That's minuted everywhere else. Again, not an excuse, but I think if we start to think and we say, okay, the money's not a factor, but if he's childhood abuse, lost a parent very early, drug abuser, volatile character, implicated in multiple murders and car blowings up and everything else, not an excuse, but the indicators were there in the context that we're talking about here.
I think there's the other thing is like, and we're talking about the signs of the abuse and the people who accept the abuse instead. I don't even know if there's a sign of a person who thinks there's, as Malik, you shared about your girlfriend and the potential abuser. Like what are the signs that you can see that you are possibly going into a relationship with a potential abuser? When you see someone, or if you, I think we've all been in relationships where we probably have been emotionally abused or some form of psychological mind tricks, and we got caught up in some things out beside, like, including what Valencia has gone through the gamut. But like, what are some of the signs that people may not even be aware that this person, there are some red flags?
Well, I'll give some, and a lot of times I think the hard part for some people, based on their background, models and all that thing, all those things, depend, because some things look alike, but they're not the same. You understand what I'm saying? So control can look like
a lot of attention.
Concerned. Like, what time are you going to get to your friend's house to make sure you make it okay? Right? That's a concern. But when you have to let me know where you are, what time, how long you're going to be. I'm angry if you're 10 minutes late. You didn't call me, or I pop up where you are, but when you're in the dating phase, it's like, oh, he just like want to know where I'm at. And he's just so in love. He's always on the phone with me. But actually they're laying the groundwork for you to always have to be present and available.
Are they training you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's like a training, right?
Absolutely. And I really believe that my ex-husband sniffed me out as easy as, my father displayed control, physical stuff with me at the age of 19 in front of him. So he saw, oh yeah, this is prime for what I'm looking for. You know what I mean? This is some of the groundwork has already been laid. So yes, there is some grooming. There's all of that, because who in the hell meets you day one and gonna smack the shit out of you and then you're gonna stay with them? So there's a process to this. It doesn't just happen like I meet you, I like you, I'm gonna smack you, and then we're dating each other. So there's definitely a process. And then I think we get so appalled over the physical nature, because as long as we compare what we're doing to physical, we're not abusing or we're not being abused. And I learned that there are like 28 different kinds of abuse. And before you get to physical, some of those other things have to already be in place, because you can't just smack, like I said, you just can't smack the hell out of somebody. You have to break them down their self-esteem. You have to break them down and take them away from their support system. You have to break them down emotionally. You have to break them down about how they look physically. You have to break them down. And
Mhm.
that's all of those things. You have to have control over their money. Oh, babe, I don't want you to work. I'm going to take care of you. I got this, and you like, oh, that's good. Yeah. And then next thing you know, he has control over, you can't
Right.
move, unless he gives you 30 cents. You know what I'm saying? So it's a grooming, it's a process. There's level to it. Physical just happens to come after the other ones. And some people think they are successfully and made it out abuse free, or they're not abusers, or they're not being abused, because we're always comparing to physical
Yeah.
and not the rest of it.
Yeah.
So
Emotional.
I'm going to add a little man's perspective here, growing up, coming up. So one of the things that you learn very early is that the way to engage women is an art. So what that means is that the people that are most dangerous for you are the ones that are most proficient in the art of acquisition. So which is appearing to be what they want, reading the signals and what they need,
Mhm.
double clicking into their vulnerabilities and appearing to be what works or appears to be what they need. If you've ever Googled it, look up PUA, which is pickup artist. They teach young boys and men exactly what you're talking about there, Valencia. Now, none of that says once you get it, there is an obligation or a commitment or some character that needs to go. So what that means as a man when I was younger is the kind of men that knew the acquisition art form got the most women, and they also had the most carnage in their background, right? Difficult breakups, people that hated them because they were treating those people as disposable. So I'm just sharing that with you to say that there is an engagement thing here, which is the kind of people that would be good at seducing you and making and appearing to be what you want, and not necessarily the kind of people you want to date. It is the people that don't make themselves available to you, that aren't obviously into you in the way that makes you feel something. The boring people that are going to pay the mortgage for 100 years, even if they're only alive for 30. That might be the person you want to clue into rather than the guy that shows up with the right car, says the right things, pays the check on time. Those are kind of hard. So I just wanted to share that to say there's an element there that we need to think through.
Can I
Gentlemen,
ask
go,
if
go.
abusers? Just a quick question, Natalie. I'm sorry. So,
Go
like
ahead.
the pickup artists that you're talking about, Marcel and Valencia, in your experience with dealing with people that are abusers, are they typically well liked people? Because I tend to believe that, because
Yes.
nine
Yeah.
times out of 10, people don't tell on them; they just stay silent.
Well, yeah, so they tend to be really cool people to their peers, friends, and things of that nature, but the family, they know. I don't care what anybody says. The family knows. I was beat in front of my ex-mother-in-law. I spent the night at my sister-in-law's house and was like, okay, thinking like I'm escaping him, but at the same time, I need to be somewhere where he can't say I was with somebody all night. So I'm gonna go to his sister's house. And then the next morning she was like, well, I don't want to tell him you stayed here. It's like, are you effing kidding me? Like, I'm gonna die now. Took his mom home with me. She was like, she was with me. And he was like, oh, you think having my mama with you means something? So just the whole, so it is no one is 100% undetected. A lot of the times it's the family, which is why I was very interested in the question, what would you do if Diddy was your child, or if Cassidy was your child, or if Diddy was a female? What if your daughter is Diddy? Because that's, I think, is what is going to take for us to, it'll never go away, but it can decrease significantly if we stop turning a blind eye to our family members and looking for another level of justice under our roof than we want to take place when the victim is under our roof.
Is
So
it?
to answer your sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Marcel.
To answer your question there, Sunshine, I think it's really important to remember that most people are masters of managing perception. So your question was, why do some people not like them? Most of us don't dig too far down, right? People in America was
No, she said
her question was like, why do they go undetected, or why are they so well liked?
Correct. And that's what I'm saying is we don't do very much due diligence to get to the heart of someone's character. I'm not in their space for long enough, right? Most of the male friends I have never seen them in a relationship context. I know them on the soccer field. I know them for the things we do together. We drink together. We go on vacation together. They're really funny. We don't see the context that an intimate partner will see them in. That's the first. I think the second thing.
But Marcel, let me ask you really quickly, because I'm learning to do this now as I'm getting older with just discernment. When I hear one of my friends say something that's maybe off the cuff, like, "Oh, I always smack the shit out of her," or something, I'm kind of like, whoa, bro, like that's what we doing now? Like, so I feel like the signs are there.
Yes.
We all have like the molester uncle that everyone knows, like, oh, don't leave the kids alone with dogs. But no one says anything about it. No one brings it to the forefront. I think we have just normalized so many traumatic behaviors in our community that we let these things go. And like me, I'm so vigilant now that I look at certain things. I'm like, nah, bro, you can't do that around me. Like, you my boy.
I'm giving you a high five, bro. That's what I'm talking about, because that is one of the biggest things that I want people to know. Because I talked to Natalie. We had a sidebar because, once again, my experience. And one of the biggest things that I have asked over the years of helping people and sharing my story is asking men, do you know an abuser? Mm-hmm. And the numbers say one thing, but I haven't met a Black man yet to tell me he has a friend or anybody that was an abuser. And I'm like, well, how the F is this possible? Like, they're out here and they have friends, and what do you mean? And so Malik gave the perfect example. When you're out, Marcel, doing your drinking, have they said, man, this B, she always on my this or she always out there. I'm sick of her doing this. Now my woman couldn't wear that, or this, my woman couldn't do that. Those are the signs right there. But once again, like Malik said, we've normalized this just to be guy talk. We just venting, this is what we're doing. Then it goes like that.
Like, one of my good friends used to tell me that he picked his lady up every day from work. And I was like, wow, that's dope. Like, you're a real good man. Like, you picking her up. And then as we talked and talked, I was like, oh, so it's not that you're a good man. You're like an insecure abuser. Like, cause I was like, bro, like, you going to the city every day, like traffic, rush hour. Like, I was like, bro, I got kids and I'm not picking them every day. Like, so as he dug, and I was like, and I did talk to him, like, bro, like, you got to chill. Like you got to, if you're with this woman, trust her. Nah, I'm picking my lady up every day because how niggas be in the world. And I'm like, bro, like, you sound crazy right now. So I think when we start to really dial into what people are saying, it's there in the language. We just sometimes not paying, because I thought it was obscene and obscene to me that this person would want to pick, like Valencia said, it sounds loving in the beginning. Oh, my man wants to make sure I'm safe, so he drops me off everywhere and he picks me up everywhere. But really, that's him trying to control your movements because he doesn't trust you. So it's like, it's not what your person is doing, it's why are they doing it.
Yeah.
So I'm not in any way disagreeing with either of you. I think you're absolutely right. What I'm saying is, how many times have you decided, based on that signal, he wants to pick his girlfriend up or his partner up or whatever else, has that been end of the relationship? Because what you also said is everybody has one of these things in their family. Most of the time, you have to say, is it my responsibility? Do I own that situation?
So the question that we asked, that question of the day earlier this week, around if Diddy was your son or if Cassie was your daughter, and how would you really deal with that, is especially if they are if the child that's doing the abusing is of influence, right? Or they are a beacon in the community. How do you deal with that if that is your child?
They got to get help. Like I mean, I understand we don't want to shame people or publicly humiliate people. It's like, I feel like in the Black community, we have so many open secrets, like about Dr. King's infidelity or Luther Vandross' ambiguous sexuality. It's so many little secrets out there that we kind of know, we kind of don't know. But it's like at a certain point, you have to just air your dirty laundry. And it's like, if my child is running around beating women or men, I have to get them help. Because here's the thing, even let's say I want to protect my child as any parent does. I might want to protect my child from one of their abusers finally killing them. I'm gonna be like,
Right.
listen, son, you keep beating this girl, she's gonna stab you to death. So if I didn't play it from the angle of, trying to do the right thing for the woman being abused, I might even try to fool my child and say, listen, I'm doing this to help save your life. Because this woman's gonna reach her boiling point and then she's gonna kill you in your sleep one night. But I think we have to get these people help because, I've never been an abuser, so I can't really understand the psyche of someone who abuses people. And there's definitely some things in there that need to be addressed, and I don't have the skill set to do that. But I would definitely say, like, listen, I saw the first thing you slapped her at a barbecue. I let that go. Now she's coming over here with a black eye, and I would have to at some point say, listen, son, daughter, you have to get help.
Malik, if she's slapping her at the family barbecue, you gonna let that go?
I'm gonna tell you this. I had a cousin one time that smacked the shit out his girlfriend at a family function, and we all was just like, I was maybe 14 at the time, so I wasn't really in a position to do anything. But I remember we was all like, is this? And he was one of those jail cousins that's always in and out of jail, kind of stocky. And I was like, this nigga is crazy. Like, I remember we were just like shocked. I don't know if the older men in the family said something at the time, but I remember my cousin did that. We were just all like, I was in shock as a kid. I remember that.
Malik, why didn't you step in? That's my point. That's
I was like 14 at the time, so I was like, I was 14.
That's just an excuse.
No.
We can't have a conversation that says.
I'm just gonna give the full rundown. I was like, this is a cousin who had notoriously been in and out of jail. So you hear the stories about Rikers Island, Sing Sing. So he was a cousin that was known to do his thing. I was a little kid, and I saw it, and for me at 14, I really didn't know how to process it. His mother and father didn't say anything. I know if I said something, he was going to beat me down and my brother down. So I was just kind of like, wow, that was crazy. I remember it was just crazy to us. And as kids, I kind of like went back outside and played, and we laughed about it. I was like, dang, you see how he smacked so? Like, it just, I didn't really digest it at 14 of what it was. Like, now as a
I just want to take a moment because we had another panelist join, Dr. O. Hey, Dave. I know
Good evening.
We're going to get into the conversation. Continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say hi and go ahead, Valencia, and then I'm.
And so, Malik, with that, you didn't take that internally, but what about the other children that saw that? We all take it, and we take that information and we process it somehow. But that same family, if your female cousin would have came back and said, this guy slapped me at his family reunion.
Oh, we'd have been over there instantly.
You see what I'm saying? But not worrying about, because you could go over there, but what if he's been a Sing and all those things like Marcel was saying? Those are the excuses we give. And I'm not saying you per se being at 14, because 14 is still a kid. You sitting around here, you don't know what to do, and adults aren't doing anything. So you just kind of like, oh my God. So that went in some of your cousins' mind, as women included. Oh, that's okay. Because when cousin Pookie did, they didn't do anything. And so that's what, so I will agree with Marcel on that. That is what we're talking about. What are we going to do? What do we do when we see it? Now we've seen it. P. Diddy, we've seen it. We heard about it, but we've seen it. Your uncle, you've seen it. You hear it upstairs in that apartment above you. You know that that's what's going on. What do we do?
So
David,
just to add to that, just the final point, and I think that's exactly the point I was making, Valencia. It is complicated because for a man to intervene, there's even the meme around being a hero, right? It ain't your fight. So the impending and obvious physical violence, I'm going to go and lose an eye in a fight with a man over a woman I don't know. I go to my own family. Would I risk my own life to engage with a man, as Malik said, using that example, that's been to Sing Sing, that is willing to beat his wife or girlfriend in front of his own mother? What the fuck is he going to do to me? Mind my French. So I'm just trying to remind you all that none of us has agency to protect someone that isn't our own kin. Malik just said it. If it was his family, he's going to back it.
Somebody
You
said
can't call the police. Exactly. You can make a
you
call, but
can.
we stand by and we don't do anything. We don't call. And I'm gonna be, and let me let out a little secret.
Disclaimer.
90% of your abusers ain't gonna do shit to nobody else. You have a small percent of them that go crazy and go to the job and shoot them and stuff. But what do we see? The most deaths come from within that argument. My ex-husband was a punk. He would not have went, because if he wasn't and he didn't like his brother dancing with me, he would have said something to his brother. If he didn't like the guy that was kept looking at me at the restaurant, you should have said something to them. So here's the other myth that we need to break. How do we stop it? By calling these, I'm gonna use some
Go ahead. Girl, you can curse. It
these
is
punk ass motherfuckers. Call them out on their shit. They're not getting ready to do anything to you. They're doing what they're doing because no one's doing anything to them. The number is really small on how many gonna turn around and bust you in your shit if you say something. Most of them are punks. So I'll put that out there and I'll put my signature under that.
I like that.
Thanks.
Punk as what did Ryan Clark? Can we play what Ryan Clark said? I love what he said. Real quick, I just love this video, and then we're gonna go into Dr. O because do we have it queued up? I love this shit.
The first thing, and we need to be honest, like Sean Combs is a bitch.
Yeah.
Right? And I think the men who are around him and knew he was that, they bitches too. I do have two little girls, and we sort of got into the conversation when he was brought up by Floyd Mayweather.
What if he
some
gonna do this and he's
saying,
doing that and he could do that? They not getting ready to bust a grape in the fruit outside.
Sean Diddy Combs is a bitch. I think majority of men who hit women and women, most people who are hitting somebody who is either weak-minded or they're talking to them crazy. Same thing for people who are emotionally abused. Yes. It's the same thing. They're not gonna do shit to somebody else. Mm-hmm. They are doing people that they feel like they hold power over. I forget that shit. And I know we say we don't want to get involved because it's uncomfortable and all that other shit. But I'm sorry, it's time to fucking blow the whistle on motherfuckers. Sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Mike Tyson beat Robin Givens. I'm not fighting Mike Tyson. I'm just letting you know it's not that simple. Okay?
Okay, and we're gonna pick that, but we're gonna pick those few instances where the person might be bigger, stronger, or whatever. But for your everyday down the street person or the person that's fighting above you in your thing is not getting ready to do anything.
Y'all said Puff gets people to kill for him.
So you want me to fight Puffy?
Wait. Go ahead, David. I want to, because he just got in. Sorry. Dave, are you? Go ahead, Marcel. I'm sorry.
Hello. Okay, can you guys? I don't know. I was having some connectivity issues.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I was in and out of the conversation. First, let me apologize for being late. I didn't realize that my commencement was going to take as long as it did. Let me just apologize for that. So, from the topic when it came in the group chat, I'm going to take a different perspective, just a little insight in this, and I don't know how popular maybe or not. I find that the biggest problem is that men or women is that we're not in a society that teaches people honestly just self-control. Period. I think the first of all, I completely agree. Sean Diddy's a complete bitch. I mean, what he did was ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense how people allow that to happen. And to be honest with you, when things like that happen, a lot of people close to you know what happened. They know your personality. They know these things, and they don't step in, which is unfortunate. The only issue that I have with what is taking place so far right now is that because we're so focused on what Diddy did, and now that we see the video, how graphic it was and how disgusting it was, we're just focusing on, we're saying, men shouldn't hit women, any man that does is a bitch and things like that. Instead of saying, people, we're human beings. You don't treat the other person like that, period. Because in all honesty, I can tell you, I've seen experience, especially being on a college campus now. I see men and women who just don't know how to keep their hands to themselves. You don't have to be a woman to have a weak mind. You know, to me, if you're a person has low self-esteem, you're not confident in yourself, you've had trauma when you were younger, and you just don't know how to stand up for yourself, you can be abused by anybody. You know, is it unfortunate that, you know, in our community we kind of think it's and I think Dave, is it I'm sorry, who's the gentleman in the middle?
Marcel?
Is it Marcel? No, it's not Marcel. It says
No,
Alien Advocate. I apologize.
yeah, that's Marcel.
Oh, Marcel. Okay. He said something that's very true. Is, you know, we don't. How many people are willing to step into a situation and get themselves murdered or killed for it? I know that, you know, Valencia said that, you know, most people who are like that are punks, and I don't disagree that, but you never know when you're going to be that person where the person you actually approach is not a punk. Now, am I going to say now I stepped in and defended somebody and I can't come home to my 2 kids? And that's where we think, you know, we make it seem like it's very easy for people to step in. How many times, especially in this society now, that you see where it's not even a man beating a woman, where it's 2 men fighting, where instead of calling the cops, what do people do?
They just circle
They
around.
take a video. They take a video.
They just take a video. They don't. They just take a video. So for me, to be honest with you, the conversations, and I don't know who's going to start that conversation. The conversation really should be is, listen, when you're in a relationship with somebody, man or woman, at what point do you have those conversations about what you like and what you don't like, what you're willing to take and what you're not willing to take? And when these things happen, to be honest with you, is a matter of which taboo now called in amongst our people, just in counseling. But we don't have those. We don't have those type of conversation. It's just what we're quick to say is just, oh, this person is the abuser. And I'll tell you a personal story. It was very interesting. I remember dealing with a male and a female student on our campus where you could tell something was going on. When they finally opened up and you find out what everything was going on, to be honest with you, they were both very abusive to each other. And the problem was that no one was willing to step in and say, guys, you're at fault with this, you're at fault with this. Because we're so quick to what we do is that the person that gets hurt at the moment just automatically becomes the victim. And the person, whoever did the hit, and I'm not saying man or woman, is what is taking place. Now, at what point you got to look at to say, where's your self-control? If you look at everything that we have conversations about over and over again, all I keep hearing is victim or the abuser. Very rarely do I say is what has been done to teach people to walk away.
Well, David, let me ask you a question.
Can I respond to that, please?
Let me ask him a quick question. Can I ask him a quick question?
Yes, Malik.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Malik.
You and Marcel, you and Marcel keep kind of touching on this point of no one wants to step in and get beat up by someone bigger than them, right? But as intelligent men, I remember when I lived in Drew Hamilton projects and we heard a woman getting abused upstairs. My aunt called the fire department. She didn't even call the police. She called the fire department, and the fire department showed up. She went and told the lady, listen, I heard something happened up there, girl. I didn't know, I didn't want to get involved per se because, your man is crazy. And she's like, no, thank you. That saved her life. So there's creative ways. Sometimes you can put eyes on the situation. People like to do things in private. Sometimes you could, so I think there's a lot of different ways. No one necessarily says you have to jump in there and be ready to take a bullet. But there are many creative ways that you can see something going down and decrease or shift the outcome depending on the choice of action you take. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. Go ahead, Valencia.
So I'm just want to touch back on his point about self-control. That is like, to me, that is an assessment of somebody who is so detached from the realities of the situation that they're making these judgment calls from the bench. It's sort of like, I can't play basketball, but I'm on the sideline trying to tell Jordan what he should have done in the middle of the game. And so what I understand of basketball is totally different than him. So I'm really in no position to do that, right? And so when we just say we need to have self-control, you control yourself with the tools you have to control yourself. And so if you have been shown when you're angry or you're disrespected, because let's be honest, disrespect in the hood means it's okay to get bust in your face, in your mouth, the gangs, the this. It's amongst men. It's how they do. So abusers have self-control, because when they get ready to break their stuff, to tear up the house or smack, they don't. Sometimes their car window didn't get busted. Their clothes didn't get bleached. So we're thinking, we know that there are things that we're out here, So to say self-control, I think undermines the real situation. Because if we just say self-control, just learn how to control yourself, what does that look like? Like people say, I'm doing the work. What does it look like? Self-control, you have to be taught and given options so that you can go into the toolbox and do something other than smack, yell, punch the wall, or whatever it is that you do that invoke these situations. But to just say we just have to have self-control, I think diminishes the impact.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that we should just have self-control. What I'm saying is that we don't teach people to have self-control.
So I think it's also, and Dave, I don't know, but I think it's, you say we don't teach people self-control. I think the other thing is like Black families, if you were raised in a Black family, especially between the late 60s up into the 70s, a whipping was part of our actual raising, right?
Yeah, whipping kids, not your wife.
Yeah,
Either way.
It's still showing physical things as a way to solve the issue.
Whether you smacked her, whether you verbally abused her, whether she verbally abused him and diminished him, it is some behavior that we have, I'm not going to say all of us, but a lot of us have witnessed, right? Mm-hmm. And the question is, we don't even realize it has spilled over into our current relationships. Mm-hmm. So we talk about self-control. We got to realize what is out of control first. Like,
exactly.
I think that is one of the things that we are missing in this whole conversation. Mm-hmm. And we say we turn a blind eye and all this other stuff. And it's just like, no, you can't turn a blind eye. You do have to actually say something. I remember one time I was walking down the streets of Brooklyn, and this is when I first met myself. I was living in Fort Greene, and there was this couple going at it. And I don't know if this is me reacting to my past, but I didn't know these people from Adam, and I'm sure the project, there was a project around the corner. I didn't care. I literally just jumped in, and he was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I was like, "Y'all ain't doing this here. Like, this is not, you're not gonna hit her and your daughter in front of me." He called me all kinds I didn't care. And I didn't call the cops, but the cops saw it. I was like, don't arrest them. I was like, I think they just need a moment. Like, I need this. It broke my heart to watch. I didn't know them from Adam.
And he didn't hit you, did he?
He did not.
I know, because he not.
He did not.
So can I just add, just to add to that, David, I totally agree, right? From very young children, we're teaching them about, is that a kind word, right? Which, if you speak to adults, is that an intentionally triggering word, right? We teach children, make criticisms about the action, not the individual, which means don't tell them they ain't shit because that's disrespectful. Tell them what you did ain't shit because that's actually what you mean. We have not taught adults exactly those things. I'm going to share with you a bit from my past. I've dated a couple, not that many women, but
whatever, Marcel.
When I encountered for the first time an out of control individual, i.e., it was their intention and it was their behavior that to actually hurt and destroy you, I left. I ran away in the night. And that's because I was in touch with my own self to say, I am not equipped to defend myself in any way against this individual or to advocate for a different outcome. So I got out of it. Now, I'm saying that recognizing that I'm a 6 foot tall Black man, I was under no physical threat of violence and that there's nothing that they could have done to me that I couldn't have defended myself against. But I understood that emotionally, me long term in a situation that would completely destroy my self-control and cool was not a place I wanted to be, and I got out. So after that, I then took it as a personal responsibility. Again, not dating that many, but the few that I did, when I saw those very early signs of things that were likely to make me lose my cool, I got the fuck out quickly. And I would get feedback. You ain't shit because you didn't call me.
But Marcel, did you see the signs with her and stay? Did you not see the signs and continue to kind of? Were you trying to?
Did see the signs.
But can I point out something in what he said? Let's pay close attention to the words we speak. And this is what I mean. Our parents didn't know. They're speaking, they're talking, our grandparents, and they say things and they're really not listening to what they said. He said he paid attention so that he could get away from someone that would make him lose his self-control. So if you are saying that someone can make you, that's the first thing that an abuser says. You made me do this. And so you have just said that you got away from people to make you do this, which says if I'd have stayed, I'd have beat the ass. You know what I'm saying? Or I could have went outside myself and lost my self-control. And that's what we need to teach people. There is never a moment that someone else is responsible for your actions. So that's what I mean by it's those little things that we think we were raised in the perfect household and we can't recall, no kind of abuse. Nobody argued. Or my mama was by herself and she did an extra job. Well, you might have been abused in a different way. You know what I mean? My daddy didn't hit my mama. He just punched holes in the wall. That's intimidation. That's saying I punched this hole in the wall to intimidate you enough to think that maybe one day it's your head. So there's so many different levels of this that's what I feel the word should be getting out, because until we are aware of all the different things that we're doing, how do we change it? It's not by teaching self-control. It's by watching what we say, what we do in front of these children, making better choices with relationships. And all of it begins with going back and really saying, you know what? I'm an abuser, or I'm this, or I had low self-esteem, or I made a mistake, but we're not willing to go back and call Big Mama wrong. Mama's not wrong. She's on the pedestal. We can't say anything wrong about Mama. And so it goes on and on and on.
So before you go, David, I just wanted to clarify one thing, because it sounded like when I said lose my cool, that meant, and I'm being honest, I was with a toxic person. They're so out of control in their behavior that I didn't want to be in that presence. So I've taken responsibility because, me and any one of us on this panel in this wrong toxic situation will lose our cool. That doesn't make me an abuser or a potential abuser, as you kind of alluded. It means I know.
And
define lose your cool.
And that's what I wanted to address and say also. We all hear different things. And I always tell people, everybody has a right to their perspective. Perspective is dependent on your interactions with people and your past history and the things that you experience. Understand what I heard from him, it was not what you heard. And I think it's because different perspective and different experiences. I make it very clear, and I tell people, when you and I teach my kids all this as much as I can, and tell them, listen, when you're in a situation with someone, and it gets to that ugly where you feel that they can get you to that point. And I make this very clear. We're all human beings. Anyone has the potential to be violent. Let's make that very clear. The most calm and the most meek, even the most person that you say is weak, anyone has the potential. You never know what that boundary or that boiling point will be. What I respect what he said and his honest truth. And to me, and I think this is part of where you start to teach self-control. What I heard from him was self-control. When you know what your boiling point is, and the person that you're in a relationship with, and let's be honest here, if you're in a relationship with somebody long enough, you know the things that can trigger them. You know the things that can get under their skin, that can get that action out of them. It takes self-control to have someone come to you, do something that they know is going to trigger you, and you're going to say, you know what? We're not going to go here. I'm going to walk out. Oh, wait, just let me finish my point. And I get what you're saying. Get and walk out on that. That does not mean I'm making an excuse to being an abuser. What I'm telling you is that one is you are getting me to this point where we can actually have words and possibly be physical. Two is you don't seem to be realizing where this is going. And I'm trying to walk away from it so we don't get there. And this is where about self-control. And I'm gonna go back to this and I have to say this, and I think the levels of abuse, I completely, there's so many different types of abuse, you know. And the biggest thing that bothers me at times with people is, and I'm going to use it and I'm going to flip the situation around, because it's very easy for us to talk about men being abusive, because listen, the stats clearly show men are definitely more abusive than women. That's the hands down. I'm never denying. I tell you now, and like I said, person,
Except with emotional, hold on, Dave, with the exception of
emotional abuse, yes. And that was the point I was going to get to. My dad was an abusive person, you know, and I said to myself, I would never want to be that person, you know. But let's be honest here. You never know you never know what someone can trigger you to do. I've been in the street where someone came, and to me, honestly, if a family member wasn't there, I probably would have taken this person and thrown them in the street and watched a car hit them. Now, am I that type of person? No, but they have gotten me to that point. And my point being, though, is that this is someone that I barely even knew. So now what do you do when it's someone that you're in a relationship with and you feel? The thing about it is this, and I'm going to say this, that sometimes in relationships and when people even outside looking in, people don't want to be honest about the situation. When you're wrong, and I hear about it when they say family members and things like that, it is easy for us to speak, but when you're in the situation, it's much harder to say you're in a room with someone and I have to chastise you and talk down to you and let you know about your errors in front of the other person. It's easier said than done. We can all talk. I can't speak for you guys, but I'll say for me, I've known when I've seen it with family members, things like that. And it was very hard to talk about and to tell that person, listen, yo, you need to calm down. Where are you going with this? Even if the person did you wrong, your reaction to it was 1,000 times beyond where it needed to go.
But David, can I ask you a quick question?
Ask away.
But this is always a question I try to ask people. It seems like the few abusers I do know, they always seem to have one target of their abuse. It's their significant other. They never direct that rage at their daughter, let's say. Mm-hmm. They never direct that rage at their mother. Mm-hmm. So to me, if you're truly like a crazy abuser, because I know one guy that was just off the charts, that he'd fight anybody, his wife, best friend, mother, father, grandfather. So it's like, how do we seem to have these invisible boundaries we put in place for our parents, for our colleagues at work, who trigger us in the same fashion? But yet, when it comes to our significant other, so it seems like these people display self-control when it comes to other people, but then when it comes to their targets, self-control is gone. So that's why I'm even having a little trouble digesting this whole self-control analysis, because it's not like these people are out of control. It's like, I always give my mother this example. You know, there's usually a crazy panhandler on a train. But even within those crazy panhandlers, they know who to go bother. They might bother that little feeble white lady. They not bothering that 6'4" black dude with cornrows and Timberlands on. So it's like, even when you see crazy people out there in the street, I'm like, bro, he's not crazy, because he's picking his targets very carefully on this train. So I feel like if you're an abuser that abuses everyone, then I 100% agree with you. You need a self-control lesson. But if you're an abuser who only is targeting your wife, but you control yourself around your mom, because my mother gets into if I was going to abuse anyone in this world, it'd been my mom years ago. She's beat me, yelled at me. You know, my mother's probably done the worst things to me of any woman possible. And I've never even raised my voice. Well, if the most I've done is maybe give her the middle finger behind her back when she walked out the door. You know what I mean?
Malik, before David goes.
You know,
and I thank you so much, Malik, for that, because you're letting me know that it's not just a female's point of view of that. And so I thank you so much for saying that, because I totally agree with what you're saying. That's what I was saying. They say they lost self-control, but only her stuff is broken and beaten and things of that nature. But what I want to say too about the self-control really quick, it's not self-control that we need to learn. It is tools. It's like, there is nothing, we won't take personal responsibility. I say anytime you point the finger across, you're making it someone else's issue. You are in control of you. You can, like right now, just for instance, if I chose to stay in an emotional place of my experience, I probably couldn't have watched the video. But because I have actually truly done the work, and see, this is where we get to where we say, oh, this person, I got to walk away from this person or they're going to do this. No, because before that person did that, let's be honest, it's rare that you're in a relationship and out of nowhere, this person does something that pushes you to the point. So that's what I mean by we're staying in these unhealthy relationships because we're comparing them to something worse down the street instead of looking at our own relationship, comparing it to nothing else, but are we two healthy people? And when two healthy people come together, there are no, you're going to push me to the limit.
I think it's I do agree. I think the funny thing is just like when you think about, and when we talk about can abusers heal, can the abuse heal? When you think, I mean, and we demonize when people, it'll be interesting how we look at Puffy 10 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Just how when we looked at what happened with Chris Brown and Rihanna, I don't think he's actually laid his hands on anybody, but I wonder if that stain still remains with him. Or Chad Ochocinco when he abused someone else, or when somebody else, like, how long does the stain remain? Can you actually, what is the work to change the behavior as an abuser? And what is the work to change the behavior as somebody who has been abused, so you don't keep attracting the same type of, because I think that's the other thing. Like it's like I don't know what show I was watching. Oh, Sharon Stone in Casino. She was constantly attracting the treatment of the pimp that would smack her, abuse her, sexually abuse her. And she had a good man, but she couldn't even appreciate Robert De Niro, but he was controlling too in a different way. Like he was trying to, she always attracted men that controlled her body and told her what to do because she felt like that was her value.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question is, it's just like, how can this behavior change? And what work does that acquire? Because when we look at somebody like Chris Brown or Ocho Cinco, I don't.
Well, I think for one, you're describing the kind of person that Malik ran into, that the abuse is so normal to them that they think that that's love, that is part of the dynamics of a relationship. And as far as if someone who has abused was an abuser, can they change? The answer is yes. I have met a person who used to abuse a male, and it was the first man to ever explain to me that mindset and where he got, and it came from the models. It came from the successful couple on the block that everybody looked up to. They knew that they fought. It came from the being around the gangs in the hood, that if anybody disrespects you, you get to smack them in the mouth. It comes from the parents that, the stepdad that didn't really get along with the daughter, and they're fighting. And so all of things went in as whoever said it was not okay to hit a girl. Disrespect is disrespect. You disrespected me. So this is what happens, right? But what it takes is, once again, what very little of people do is look at yourself and say, I'm tired of being tired, and I'm tired of the results I'm getting. And the results I'm getting is not coming from anybody else's actions but my own. And so Malik asked me prior to the show, he was like, do I think that there's some kind of like accountability on both sides? And I said, absolutely. It's true. My ex-husband was an asshole. He was a monster. He was physical. He beat me. He did all kinds. I could tell you all kinds of stuff. I'm snatched ball, all kinds of stuff, just all kinds of stuff. For why? Because I spoke to a guy or went to a reunion, and you hug somebody, and then I see the face and I'm like, oh shit, And so these things happen, and that's true who he was. But why was I there? Why did I stay? Those are the things that I had to get to the point and say, I'm going to examine me. I'm not going to walk away and be the victim and say, oh, my ex-husband was this and that. No, ma'am, what were you doing? Why were you there? And I linked it back. And see, this is where you have to say, we were wrong. I was dumb. He broke me down.
I'll back it up for a second. Why did you stay?
I stayed because it was normal to me. My father was controlling. My father was physical with me. So even though we may think it seems wrong, when it's in there, like you said, you blocked out some things, we go, and so we do this, but it's in there. And so the things that I thought, because I believe that, yes, a man should lead, right? I'm a follow. But if you follow the wrong man, you get led down the wrong path. And that's what I did, because it was so easy to transition from a father who was cussing me out, who was smacking me at the age of 19 in front of him. So do I stay here with my dad doing it, but I can't even breathe? And over here, I can at least pretend I'm grown,
Right.
So it was like, which one do I do? You know what I mean? So I went there, and I stayed and I stayed and stayed. And then part of the reason why you don't tell, because you don't want to involve and get your family involved, the ones that that will go to jail. Right. You don't want to get them hurt. So then you don't say anything, because now you feel responsible for their death if they get hurt, or them going to jail for killing him, And so you have all these different dynamics that go back to, but that person has to get to a point where they're willing to say, what I saw in my home was not healthy. And we won't get there because there's too many
it's distraction
rules that you're not supposed to go against your family and say this against your mom and your grandfather and who all these other people that showed you this dysfunctional behavior. You're not supposed to go against them. And so we never can get to the root of the issue.
Yeah.
And that's where we are.
Yeah.
So
Anthea,
can I? Oh, sorry, go on, Anthea.
Go ahead, Anthea.
A quick question, just pertaining to what you were saying, Valencia. At what point do we think parents are disciplining us or abusing us? Because it sounds like that line has been crossed in your household with your dad.
Yeah, I would say now that I really couldn't even honestly answer at what point. Do I think we should steer all the way from physically hitting someone? I have learned that we can, but even with my grandchildren, I'm like, get out. And I'm like, and I get torn. Like, should I pop their hand, or how else will they know not to play with this? And so it gets back to, if you're gonna be honest, it's abuse.
It is. I mean, when I read the statistic, it is slapping someone.
Yeah.
Snatching someone, anybody laying your hands on them in any form or fashion is a form of domestic abuse.
I have my second grade.
Well, I have a controversial point.
Yes.
Why are we even talking about the most vulnerable? Abusing a child. How is that not worse than abusing a woman?
Well, we're not saying it's not worse. We're showing you where it starts.
We're debating it.
Have normalized.
No, we're not debating it. I think
we're debating it.
No.
I'm just saying.
Hold on. We're not debating it.
We're
saying no. You're not. We're saying actually I think that's the actual foundation of it. We're not saying it's worse. It's terrible. I don't think anybody is saying that it's worse. It's actually the foundation of it. Especially, I think, in our community.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think, right, we've spent enough time talking about men who abuse. Maybe we need to save some time for the alternative view. Let's talk about some of the root causes. Go ahead.
All of my answers are the same, no matter who's the abuser. We haven't said men or women. We said abusers and abused for the most part. No one has tried.
No. I have to correct you. Before you said when a man. You did say when someone hits a girl. We've made this a gender thing. Regardless, listen. In all reality, let's be honest here. When we talk about abuse, at the end of the day, it does end up becoming a gender conversation.
But the other thing is because maybe because the statistics don't show the report.
I'm not disputing that. No, I agree with the statistics. The statistics don't lie. It is what it is. But what I'm saying is that in reality, here's the thing: is that I don't even know how I can put this into words. Is that because of the way domestic violence is, and I'm going to say this again, the majority of people, when we're talking about physical abuse, it does tend to be men abusing women. It does become a gender situation, which is why, and I don't know how I can even formulate what I say about self-control, because I tell you this much: if what we saw Diddy do, he did to a male, we're not having this conversation. If Oh, and correct me if I'm wrong. And if, let's say, the roles were reversed, and she did it what she did to Diddy, no one's gonna say, "Oh, she's an abuser." I'm almost pretty sure. And if anyone here disagree with me, please, it's okay. They're gonna say he's a punk.
I will tell you, I have helped a young guy get out of a relationship and let him know that he was a victim of domestic violence. And I will say, number one, with Diddy, he did there are men who have alleged that he's done these things. And what have they gotten from other men and women and the public is they have been dragged through the mud, that they were weak. How did you let someone rape you and beat you? You're a grown man or whatever. So the same thing happens to them, even worse, which is why the numbers might be skewed, because how many men are going to come out and say it when they know that's what they have to deal with? And so we have not made this a gender thing, I don't think. I think we have been talking about it. It's just been because of the statistics. We know more instances of the man being the abuser to the abused. But the same foundation is there for the young man who I was trying to help get out of his situation. His mother was not a great mother. They got into it constantly physically. And he always had in his head, he can't hit his mom. He's not going to hit her. He wants to. He would come to work with scratches. So just that whole thing then put in his head, don't hit the woman, and the attention and the love he wanted from his mother was the foundation that allowed him to get with a female, right? That does that. And then let's talk about that dynamic of the woman being the abuser. Those numbers are going up. And why? Because these are still the children who saw this, and now they're saying, I'm not going to let it happen to me. And what the best thing to do to counter someone from bullying you is to become the bully. And so I think that's why the numbers are going up as it pertains to women in the abuser situation, as it comes from physical, because they want to say, it's not going to happen to me, so I'm going to be that. And that's what we're seeing.
May I just say something to that? And listen, I'm going to say something that's like is unpopular. I kind of disagree with just one part of the statement where he said that they're saying this is not going to happen to me. Part of what I'm seeing, and I'm not saying this from my experience, this is what I'm seeing, especially in this generation of females that are on our campuses. I've heard so many times where a female, so what if I did this? A guy's not supposed to hit a girl. Well, is that my argument, or the fact that you shouldn't be putting your hands on someone, period? At this point, there are some women, I'm not going to say all, who basically say, well, it's okay for me to do that because it's not okay for the other way around. That's a problem, which is what I'm saying, is that we're not teaching people the proper way to communicate and deal with stresses or things that we don't like or discomfort. It's the other things. We sometimes we speak from our perspective instead of looking at it from the societal view. I'm looking at it from the societal view. Just because we may be responsible enough, we may have the control to say when something happens, I'm going to walk away, or we're not going to do certain things. That does not mean that's the body at large. And what the body at large is saying right now is, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, is that men abuse women. Women tend not to abuse men. And the scary part is, to be honest, which I completely agree that the numbers are skewed. There are many men who get abused.
I think the other thing is like based on one of the statistics that was really interesting is that the one place where men feel like they're abused higher is emotionally. Mm-hmm. And that's the most common form of abuse. And it's like 1 out of every person has been emotionally abused. And most men actually, what is it, a 0.4% difference, actually experience the emotional and psychological abuse of women. And it makes sense because I feel like as women, our tongue is our sword. Mm-hmm. So we use it viciously when we are upset or we want to cut you down. So I think that is one of the things and I think that also may be, it causes a cause and effect. I'm not saying, and men use their hands, I don't want to say sung versus tongue versus might.
I got
But
you.
I think sometimes that's really, I don't, Valencia, I don't know, but or Anthea, when you saw your parents, your parents go at it, I know my parents had a very contentious relationship. It was verbal.
But
They were.
I also feel like when it comes to what we call in the Caribbean discipline, I feel some of that is abuse. And like I said, that person in my household, abused my older sister physically to the point where we watched him break one of her bones in front
See,
of us.
that's abuse.
And so that's where I'm like, when does discipline change? And and what is this thing about hitting kids to discipline them? Because I didn't get beaten or hit because I learned to stay quiet at an early age, and I think I turned out okay.
But I mean, Sunshine, like, just to quickly interject, I think sometimes, like, I'll use this example, like when you pop a child so they don't touch the stove. That's just more because they probably like the cerebral understanding to know, like, this is how it's gonna burn you. So if you're 2 or 3 and I just pop your hand in the hurt of your hand being popped keeps you away from a greater danger. I think that is kind of the root of where Black discipline came in from. Like, that was the foundation, to just kind of an easy way to save you from a greater harm. But then I think maybe some parents twisted it and morphed into something a little bit crazier.
And I completely agree with you. And that is, and I have to be honest with you, as everyone was saying this, I was sitting to myself and saying, do I even mention this? But I have to be honest with you. I was a spanker. I'm no longer a spanker. But that's because my kids are a little bit older. And it has nothing to do that they can, I mean, my kids are 13 and 9. It's not like about they can physically take me or anything like that. But I was like, there are other ways for me to now teach them, because now they can a little bit understand a little bit more. I can sit down and have a conversation with them so they can understand, you can't do this. And this is why, and this is where the consequences can be. There's a clear difference between discipline and abuse. I mean, we may play with words, but let's be honest with you. Popping your son, your son or your daughter on the butt for doing something that's incorrect, so you can say, don't do that, that's a danger, or don't do that, that's not correct. It's not abuse. You get their attention immediately, you understand, and that there is, and human beings, we do tend to work, whether we like it or not, based on fear. When you decide you're not going to do something that you think is dangerous or something like that, it is based on fear or consequence. Let's be very frank. So to me, at that age, all you're doing is really teaching them there's limits, understand there's consequences. You can. There's a difference between popping your child on the ass and breaking their arm.
So I'm gonna, on the first topic here, I'm gonna disagree with David.
Okay.
I think if you do not have the self-control with the most vulnerable in our society, if you cannot have the decorum, have the fortitude, have the self-will to control that, you have just taught them that the top end of being able to control someone else's behavior is to beat them. And I'm not judging you, right? I grew up myself getting spanked.
I understand your point.
But I read it and I always think about this from 2 perspectives, right? The only difference between the person who spanks or corrects or whatever you want to call it, their child and their wife, is when it gets to the top end, they don't have a way to say the pressure valve is there and I'm walking the F out. I'm going to leave these kids to my wife. I'm going to drop your ass off at your grandmother's. I don't know how to defend myself against your tongue. I'm going to correct your ass. Now, I'm not in any way, Valencia, saying I am an abuser. I'm not even saying I understand. All I'm saying is every kind of male figure that's ever been around me avoids altercation with someone bigger and stronger, their matriarchal family partner, right? Natalie will tell you, every woman in my life is a badass. You don't even want to fight them, they might beat you. So, we have coping.
They're abusers.
They're abusers. Yeah. But every single male figure that I've had in my life is an avoider. right? They don't attack, they don't fight. So when I look at it and I go, this person is making me feel some things that I've never felt with any other woman in my entire life, push the eject button. I'm not even playing this game.
But here's the thing, though, and because we compare things to the physical violence, we think avoiding is healthy. Not saying it's in any other categories of being an abuser, but it's still one of those things that says we have not went to the root of things of why we're avoiding. So my thing is, when you see that, you avoid the situation at that moment and walk away, and then you come back and then you carry on to the next moment you got to leave. That's still not problem solving. That's what we need to learn. We need to learn problem solving, whether you hit or avoid or silent treatment or threat or withhold sex.
I just disagree.
Okay, so we're gonna disagree. We're gonna disagree because we're at time, and we could probably we could go on. But the last question, and I'm gonna end with this because he made an attempt to apologize.
Huh?
Diddy. I'm gonna go back. We're gonna around to Diddy.
I'm like, who apologized?
I was like, wait, what?
Yes. So as we circle back and we come to, because we could go all night, y'all. This is probably about 5 hours of a show talking about abuse when we get into the underbelly of everything. As Diddy attempted to make his apology to whomever who he was making it to, I always was like, what does forgiveness or sorry really look like for the abuser and the abused? And I'm not saying you got to forget it, but what does it genuinely look like, feel like, and how do we move from it? Somebody said change.
That is the answer. That I will just go real quickly and be done. It's change. It's real life change. It's if you can tell your story and say, I used to be, and this is why, and I did this, and I am no longer. That's it. Other than that, there is no whatever. Like, I don't hold on to what happened to me, but I have nothing to do. If he died tomorrow, I would be okay with my ex-husband because he has not changed, has not acknowledged anything that he's ever done, all of that, and still doing it with his current wife, So that's totally different, And so Diddy, was his genuine? Probably not, because you would have been said it, you would have been acknowledged and say she was right. But now there's a statute of limitation, and now you're going to come out and say, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I was really effed up at the time or whatever. Because if you really were, these things have been brewing and being exposed for over periods of time for you to have said that without waiting for the video to be exposed. So I'm going to say he's probably not really genuine.
Anyone else? Hold on, Montaigne. Damn. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna say this, right? I everything that I've read about Diddy says to me he's on the narcissistic, psychopathic range.
Very much.
His apology sounded hollow. He couldn't even keep eye contact with the camera. He did not go to somewhere emotional. He did not fill me with the perspective that he even understood what he's in trouble for. It looked like a PR stunt. He couldn't even hide where he was. He's clearly on an island somewhere. So I think when you got to think through it, the way that you defend against those narcissistic dark triad types is consistency. Up until the video was out, he was out there saying this is all lies, this is a shakedown, she's a liar, she's a hoe. He tried to put her out there and destroy her. And then once the video was out there and he saw that there was real financial harm to him, real end of day stuff, then he apologized. That says to me that's a tactic, not a reflection. So that's all I have to say is I don't believe it. I don't see it.
Okay. Thanks. Anyone else as he continues to roll the curtain?
I'll just say I completely agree with everything he just said. And I think when you talk about forgiveness, I think, if you're in a relationship with someone, I think you generally know. I mean, I don't want to use the word abusive. It doesn't matter. Even if you're in an abusive relationship with, with someone, I think when someone has genuinely, feel that what they've done has wronged you and actually are truly apologetic and want to change, you'll know. I think, most people who stay in abusive relationships, listen, when you feel that you are overpowered and you have no way out, it's not as easy to get away and get out. But then you also know when someone is truly, really has tried to change and say, you know what, I know what I did was wrong, truly apologetic, and can do it, and if it happens, but most people aren't. I have to agree with, I believe it's Valencia. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Is that people who are abusive and cannot accept it and always point blame, that person usually will not change because they refuse to ever look in the mirror to say, this is my issue. So I do completely agree with that. But I do think it's important. I mean, and I say that I know it's not everyone agrees, but at some point the conversation still needs to take place. We're so tuned that people need to look in the mirror, this and that, but we really don't teach people to really communicate how to deal with each other. And I have to say, I agree with Wesley when he says sometimes self-control is just learning when somebody's about to push you to that edge and walk away. To not make the person you don't want to be.
Thanks. Anthea Malik, quickly.
I would say I haven't forgiven, but I've made peace.
All right, girl. I love that. And Malik?
I would just say that I don't believe his apology was genuine, but I believe abusers and the abused both need a level of grace. So I think as much as we want to lambast Puffy and put a lot of the onus on him, he clearly also has suffered some things. So I think he probably needs as much help as Cassie does.
Exactly. I think it is. I think it's care and encouraging people to change and understand their truth about what is really behind all the pain, whether you were abused or you're the abuser. We got a whole lot to deal with us. So, yep. That is it. Coming to the after party. Lord have mercy. I'm sorry. This was heavy, but it was good. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Valencia. Thank you, Malik. Thank you, Dr. O, Dave. And
I apologize for being
ally/advocate. And of course, my lovely co-host, Sunshine. I will see you guys next week. Everybody have a good one. If you want to talk more, come into the after party. We ain't going to be on that long, y'all. So come on. I'll see y'all soon. Thanks.
Join Stacked After Hours, The Spot, where grown men and women gather to have candid, also honest discussions about the state of life, love, and more. The Spot is a hybrid of in-person and weekly virtual gatherings. Join our Facebook group and answer our daily questions. Subscribe to our YouTube for our weekly live talk shows and join us on Zoom for our talk show after parties for lively conversations with other opinionated, grown, and sexy professionals. Just search, like, follow, and subscribe to Stack After Hours on Facebook groups and YouTube. Also like and follow our brand pages at Be Stacked Wellness on Facebook and IG. So wherever you are, at home or abroad, pull out your laptop, tablet, or smartphone and join in the conversation with the members of Stacked After Hours. The Spot by Be Stacked Wellness. See you there.
As you know, and if you are new to the Stacked family, we always keep our conversations lit and enlightening.